I'm very pleased to be here. I've been here on a number of occasions over my journey in public life, and it's always an informative discussion, really important questions at the end of these remarks, and hopefully a few answers as well. So thanks very much for having us along yet again. Can I say to you that economics isn't, in my judgment, a set of numbers on a page. It's much more complex than that, and in some respects it's also much simpler than that. It's a science that defines how we all live our lives. Scarcity, in many respects, is the great human equaliser. We all are, of course, limited by time and resources. Every day, it sets us many, many challenges, and I'd like to think that many of their solutions are in this room right now and are part of this conversation, this important debate, challenging and questioning, always looking for better ways in which we can grow our economy and deliver benefits for families and individuals and communities. That, after all, is our most important goal. I want to talk today about one of those challenges amid many, and that is, of course, this notion of transition. We hear that word a lot. In fact, we hear it all too often, I think, but in a shallow and an all too superficial way. Usually when there's bad news in the job market, and we have heard a lot of bad news in the job market over the last 4 years, the government spokesperson of the day is wheeled out to recite that line, that the jobs are gone because we're in transition and the future will be brighter because we're in transition. Sadly, that government spokesperson of the day is rarely asked exactly what are we transitioning to, and indeed that's probably not a question that said government spokesperson would welcome or would be in any real position to answer. The government, and I don't want to be overly negative in my remarks today, but I think we're long overdue for an adult discussion, a mature discussion about the state of our job market. I'm a little less buoyant than we've heard earlier on today. We need to acknowledge that there are significant problems, and it's only from that discussion that we will have, I think, an equally realistic and equally hopeful discussion about how we can build a stronger future. But I don't want to get too bogged down in the criticism, but I do have to, I think, go through some of the fundamental challenges we face before I give you a clear sense of our alternative vision. Having said that, though, the government the other day had a go at answering this important question about transition. Transition all too often used as an alibi rather than as a descriptor of what's ahead, what can be possible, what can be built with the wit and the work ethic and indeed the wisdom that we know Victoria has always been renowned for. The government released what they described as a jobs plan, but I think it's pretty clear from the coverage and from the running, if you like, from then to now that they've had some considerable difficulty in explaining that policy under the public spotlight, explaining what exactly that jobs plan means. I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that this government is adrift in relation to the jobs crisis. They're sitting on the sidelines, they're unable to tell us where we're headed and indeed how we'll get there. Struggling to explain, struggling to try, and that struggle, as important as it is, bears no comparison to the struggle that some 62,000 Victorians, that's the total number of Victorians additional, the extra numbers on the unemployment queue today compared to 4 years ago. The struggles of this government in their narrative and their policy delivery bears no comparison at all to the real struggle, the daily struggle that those 62,000 Victorians and their families face every day, together with so many others who are legitimately concerned about their future. They are the real struggle that I'm focused on and have been working so very hard to develop policy, innovative, creative, but fundamentally policy that speaks to the way we view the role of government, and I'll return to that in just a few moments. Each of you know, as well as I do, that creating jobs is not easy. The last time creating jobs was easy in our state was in the middle of a gold rush. Since then, we've built an agriculture industry, a manufacturing industry, and a services industry, and we've relied on them with the assistance of a highly entrepreneurial private sector. I think it's fair to say that in 2014, and as we look to the medium term and indeed the long term, we can't rely anymore. The global market means that investment will chase the lowest overheads and the biggest returns anywhere in the world, not just in Australia, not just in our region, but as was noted earlier, anywhere in the world. They are our competitors today and they will remain our competitors for the foreseeable future. That's not something we should be afraid of. That's not something that we should rail against with populist and largely ineffectual policy responses. We need to embrace that, understand it, and within that challenge find the powerful opportunity for a different Victorian economy, not a transformed Victorian economy, but an economy where we find and refine the things that we do best and cement them as the natural competitive advantage that we know they are. Can I say that also, and it's become very popular, opposition leaders across the country are all too keen to blame the government of the day for everything. I'm not in that business. I do run a legitimate, and I think I would like to think a well-argued commentary on this government. But I'm the first to say that many industries are changing. Many challenges we face are beyond the control of a state government. For instance, a high Australian dollar, international financial uncertainty, a whole range of other factors, a sentiment and a confidence problem in this state that I think has been made worse by the government, but is, in essence, something much broader than public policy. Those things are not the fault of any incumbent government. But the important point, ladies and gentlemen, is they're not an excuse for inaction either. They are simply not an excuse. The fact that you didn't cause part of the problem does not excuse you as the legitimately elected government of the day, a government with a majority, at least for half their term, in both houses of parliament. You're not excused from your duty to do the best you can each day, every day, to find the opportunities within the considerable challenges that we face. The notion of an excuse for doing nothing, the notion of all of these factors being an alibi, I don't think that washes certainly with those who follow public debate and public policy, people like yourselves, and of course the broader Victorian community will have none of that either. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why there is some dissatisfaction with this government and its performance, one among many reasons, but I'll leave that to another time. The key litmus test for any good government should be, is it doing what it can to support the growth of our industries? Or is it a government that steps back, steps aside and steps away? That's a very binary issue, very clear choices. Is it a government that does everything to grow prosperity, opportunity, to find those opportunities, sometimes deeply buried within the challenges we face? Or is it a government that steps aside and steps back and spends more time honing the narrative about it's not my fault rather than refining a narrative and the policy underneath it to deliver the opportunity that we're all so hopeful about? That's a key measure, if you like, a key metric about whether a government is fulfilling its role. I just don't think over the last 4 years, and perhaps for a longer period of time, our political opponents have been able to answer that question in the positive terms that each and every Victorian should be able to expect. That creates uncertainty. That creates hesitation in the private sector. It creates a slowing of investment. We can't really expect any different if the government doesn't fundamentally agree that it has a role to play, that it has a powerful obligation and a powerful ability to shape outcomes, to underpin growth, to underpin demand and confidence and sentiment. After all, if the Victorian government's not hopeful about our state's future, why should any investor be? This notion of walking away from your responsibilities, nothing is ever made stronger or better because of that. Now, I've spoken to presidents and CEOs, to senior managers, to right down to the shop floor in so many industries right across this state. And they all make the same point. They're scratching their heads. They're not, can I be very clear about this, looking for a handout, but they don't want to be abandoned either. They're looking for straight answers. They're looking for a partnership, for a plan, a direction, some certainty. They're looking for a government that isn't afraid of its obligations, but a government that's happy to assert them and work hard every day to deliver against them. That's a key philosophical difference in my view of the public sector's role and the incumbent. Reducing this complex issue, although I don't see it in all too complex a terms, but to distill it down, this really is a binary equation. The government should not be in the business of picking winners and losers. That's what we hear so often. That's the mantra from others. I think it's a clumsy and closed-minded and indeed a dogmatic mindset that's unworthy of a party that in many respects has led our nation in difficult times, in good times, a party that at least they would say has a proud record of reform and achievement. Let's not quibble with that. We'll be bipartisan on that point. But that sort of befuddled thinking is not the way forward. The question that's often asked these days, and it's to our collective detriment, is why shouldn't we? That's the question that ought to be asked, I should say. That's the question that should always be asked. Why shouldn't we? Sadly, that seems to have been replaced, certainly in terms of industry policy, with a different question, and that is, why should we? That's not a policy, that is ideology. And I think it's getting in the way of growth at a national level and at a state level. We can do much better than that, and it gets back to that core philosophical issue of the role of government to champion, to underpin growth, to underpin confidence, and to get the settings, at least in a broad sense, right. A Labor government will not preside over this sort of industrial decline. A Labor government will not accept that concept or accept the notion that the best thing to do is to do nothing. Because in life, in policy, in politics, in economics, in many of the sectors that you represent today, it is rare that the best answer, the most effective answer, is to in fact do nothing. We can't rescind our responsibility to action, clarity and a plan and a work ethic, the same work ethic that sees businesses grow and thrive across our state. That needs to be replicated in our public sector as well. The destination, I think, is a very clear one. We've got to make sure, in very broad terms, basic terms that I'm sure we could all agree on, indeed across the political divide we could agree on, we should be making the next generation of Victorians better off than the last. And to do that, I think we need to focus on areas where we can lead the world, where we can maximise returns on private sector investment through quality, speciality and expertise. So we need to identify these sectors, these areas of extraordinary advantage, growth and potential. We need to find the handful of industries best placed to benefit from a government's clear focus, its concerted and consistent effort. And we need to bring the private sector into that bargain, into that conversation, into that agenda, if you like, for the future. I want to talk about some of those industries today. And I want to talk about one of them in a little bit of detail. And of course, CSL have joined us here today, and I'm sure they'll be pleased to hear me single out the pharmaceuticals industry as one of those sectors that is set to grow and prosper. The diversity within the pharmaceuticals industry, everything from the best of research and technology to product development, manufacture, distribution and sales. This is a microcosm of a modern Victoria, if only we get the policy settings right. Globally, there is a disturbing lack of quality and integrity in medical products. 50% of medicines in Asia are counterfeit. Population, as we all know, across our region, across our globe, is ageing. So there's an increased demand for products that expects and requires a sophistication, skill and knowledge to create those products, but perhaps more than anything else, these products are unique. That requirement for sophistication, for creativity and for quality, the efficacy of these products, there's perhaps no other product like it that you can certainly buy off the shelf in a store anywhere in the world, in any marketplace. That premium on quality and reliability and efficacy is an opportunity for us in a stable, high-quality environment with the best of science, the best of technology, the best of manufacturing processes. This is a major point of strategic advantage today. I'm not for a moment saying we need to create this sector. We already have very significant presence, CSL, GSK, Aspen, Hospira, Carlin and others who already perform this function, and in so many marketplaces with so many different products, we lead the world in discovery, development and indeed providing curative care and other therapeutics to the world, not just to our state and our nation. There is an opportunity for us to continue that leadership, not just in sales, but in production as well. And I make that point. It is not just about the science. It's not just about the marketing. We can make, because of those advantages and that opportunity in quality, those advantages in integrity and efficacy, there is a great opportunity for us in this sector. Here in Victoria, of course, apart from those general points, but again I stress how important they are, particularly where quality and safety and reliability are at an absolute premium, we have also a skilled workforce, some of the world's best universities, one of the world's best medical research capacities, if I can call it that. It's not quite a sector, but in lots of different ways, those institutes, the researchers, both those in dedicated research centres, all of which I've visited, many of which I have a close working relationship with because of the great fortune that I had to be our health minister for such a long period of time. They are the best medical researchers in the world, from standalone modalities right through to translational research and hospital-based research. It's a sector, a capacity, if you like, that we should be very proud of. We have our location, of course, so proximate to the fastest growing corridor or region in the world. The largest, indeed, pharmaceutical market in the world is right on our doorstep. There is an enormous opportunity with all of our competitive strengths, not to replicate what is done elsewhere, but to exceed it, to do much better. And when I say better, that's about quality and safety, delivering products that many in our region cannot dream of. This is an enormous opportunity. The foundations are there, we're ready. So what can governments do? Many things. It can co-invest, it can provide skills and education to help businesses specialise, it can fix regulatory barriers that serve no purpose. Ultimately, it's about clearing a path. The most important step, though, ladies and gentlemen, is leadership. It costs nothing, but in many respects it means everything. Think of it this way. Those pharmaceutical companies, multinationals, they want to know that do we support their sector? Because the support of and the leadership from regional governments mean regional expansion. It's the test for global HQs, it's the test for so many who we want to expand and attract to our state, to our high quality production, our high quality research, our offering to our region and the world. Governments need to facilitate, to bring everyone to the table. Think of the pre-competitive collaboration process. When expansion is imminent, the government, as an honest broker, meets with firms and together they draw the new map and write the new rules in everyone's interests. This is an area that my team has done an enormous amount of work in, and I'll come back to it as a special sector together with 5 others in just a moment. Ultimately, the government needs to provide all of that leadership, those settings, but the government needs to invest. Governments need to stump up. They need to be clear about their intentions, be open to new ideas, grant funding and support for startups, support skills and education, have a real plan with real money and real detail. A plan you can talk people through because you've done the work to develop it. Not a plan of glossy brochures and headlines, but a plan that comes from hard work. And, can I say, listening to those who are already doing this work every hour of every day. That's what I released last week, our plan to grow our industries and to get 100,000 Victorians back to work. It was a plan that had at its heart a vision, an ambition, and a very real contribution to that goal becoming a reality. As part of our plan, I announced that a Labor government would establish a $200 million Future Industries Fund. And this is language that's sometimes used. It's probably not the first politician to claim to have had a fund that was about future industries. But rather than spouting that transition talk as an alibi or an excuse or a way to placate the concerns, the very real concerns of people in communities right now, let alone for the future, we have used this jobs plan, our back to work plan, to start the process of answering that question. Where are we transitioning to and how do we get there? We identified 6 sectors of extraordinary potential growth. Medical technology and pharmaceuticals, as I've mentioned, the new energy sector through technology and new energy generation opportunities, food and fibre, as has been spoken about today, transport, defence and construction technology, international education and professional services. Now, many of those are broad headings and can incorporate lots of different activity in our economy today, and the limitless potential that I have come to understand very well through 4 years of travelling the state, not talking at people, but listening and learning and understanding what it is that we do best and what it is that we can do best into the future. There are many other sectors that you could talk about. Earlier on we heard about the important visitor economy, whether it's from China or from any other destination. There are many other sectors, but we think these are ripe, these are ready, if only they have a government that's got that work ethic and a plan, a real plan to underpin growth and opportunity. The Future Industries Fund will offer grants of up to $1 million to firms and companies specialising in these 6 sectors, with recipients contributing a matching sum. Think about car component manufacturers developing and building new products, or those who make wind turbine towers actually being supported to make the blades and the technology to generate that green energy. Additional grants of a general nature of up to $500,000 will also be available to any company engaged in manufacturing, engineering and other emerging sectors. Eligibility criteria will be developed in partnership with industry. We will listen. We won't tell industry how the rule book will be written. We will work with them to do just that. But they'll focus on, of course, the number of jobs and the projects that without government support would be unlikely to succeed. Not because of a poor business case, but because often the first dollar is the most important dollar in a very competitive arrangement where the Melbourne operations or the Victorian operations are competing for a capped amount of capital expenditure for growth and new product development in a global company. When other governments are doing this important industry policy work, we need to be at the table doing the same. Otherwise, we set ourselves up for failure rather than growth, expansion and success. Grant programs, of course, do exist at the moment, but I think it's fair to say they're unfocused, they're uncertain, they need direction. The old way is simply not working. The unemployment data tells us that, the highest unemployment rate on the mainland. No offence to our Tasmanian cousins, but just keeping our nose in front of them, we've always done better than that, and we should always aim to. Go back to the end of the last decade, and Victoria was, despite the mining boom and despite the fact that we don't dig money out of the ground like our West Australian and Queensland friends, we were leading the nation. 93% of full-time jobs created in that last 18-month period right here in Victoria, that is of all Australian jobs. We can't settle for where we find ourselves now. There is a better way, and that's what our plan was all about last Monday. Can I give you one example? I visited a company, a family business out in Bayswater. They manufacture important composites, so fiberglass, plastic type products. 10 years ago, 98% of their work was on the VE Commodore, maybe a little longer than that actually, 10, 15 years ago. They were 98% an automotive company. Great product, export. Today, of course, they face very uncertain circumstances, but they saw this transition. They saw the challenge to auto. They didn't quite predict that we'd be competing and there'd be a repatriation of capital back to the United States because of a different wage structure, a whole lot of Obama money moving around that sector. They didn't predict that, but they knew that at some point the car companies would tell us that they were leaving. If you go to the British Airways terminal at Heathrow Airport, all the splashbacks in the bathrooms and in the kitchen area are all made from composite materials at this company. They export around the world, competing because the product they make cannot be made anywhere else. This is a great family business. It employs 100 people and they have made that transition. They've received very little support from government. When I was there, of course, I took them through all the different features of our back to work plan, many of which met with the approval of a pretty shrewd judge, the father who is literally the father of the business, and his son who works with him. This is happening. This transition is happening. Our innovation, our ingenuity that's always set us apart is driving this change. How much better might it be, though, if we had a government with a clear plan and a clear vision, a clear agenda that isn't just about stunts, but is about actually delivering, knowing what you know, knowing when to get out of the way, and knowing that the government's always got an obligation to underpin confidence and growth and opportunity. That's the key difference in this contest as we head towards the 29th of November. There is, of course, more to our plan. Victorian growth, as we all know, is built on sound planning, consultation with leaders in business and industry, focusing on the long term and making sure we use the best of independent advice. Our economic leaders must have a say in our future. This forum and so many others must have a say in our future. That's why Labor government will establish the Premier's Jobs and Investment Panel. It's fair to say this is a unique governance model to make decisions, to set priorities, to find those opportunities to underpin growth, change, transition, whatever other descriptor we want to place on it. An independent body comprised of our economic leaders that will, in many respects, change the face of our economy, I would hope, or at least set us up to make that change in a more fulsome way. A $500 million notional budget, so it's a real budget, but they will recommend on the expenditure of that $500 million to create the high-skill, high-wage jobs in those areas of competitive advantage where there can't be a replication in a low-cost location that competes against us. And this is the important point. The panel will be chaired by an independent chair and a small number of other high-profile Victorians. Those who I think's experience and qualifications will be clear to you when I run through the list. Executive members of VECI, AIG, the Victorian Farmers Federation and of course the ACTU. This is a new accord in finding new industries and creating new jobs. And self-praise is not worth very much, but I can't recall a leader of the Labor Party ever before in a state of Victoria context laying out a direct line of communication with a future Labor Premier, the expenditure, the recommendation on the expenditure of $500 million with VECI, the AIG, the VFF. This is a new way of doing things because, again, the old ways are not working. The sandwich lunches and the fruit platters and the round tables need to end. We need to make decisions. We need to get on with things. The inertia, the indifference must end. And that's what this Premier's Jobs and Investment Panel is all about, a unique model with a unique gathering of people that can be a new accord for a new economy, new industries, new jobs and new prosperity. Unexpected perhaps, but exactly what we need. That $500 million will underpin strategic investments. It'll be a voice at the heart of our government. Those high-skill, high-wage jobs are not negotiable. We have to find them, and this is the governance model that will play a big part in delivering it. It's advice that I know I will be able to trust. It'll be advice that I know I'll be able to count on. It's not a criticism of our bureaucracy, but it's a criticism of the inertia, the inaccessibility and the inaction that has come to summarise the culture of the last 4 years. If you stand still, you get past. It's as simple as that. And we just haven't seen the action we have needed. Can I talk about another part of our plan, and that is, of course, some structured payroll tax relief. $1,000 grants for those companies who take on a young person under 25, who take on a long-term unemployed Victorian who've been out of the workforce for more than 12 months, and also that $1,000 payroll tax credit for those companies who take on somebody who has lost their job, a retrenched worker. This is about kick-starting the economy. It has been welcomed at many different levels, from peaks through to individual enterprises, those many factories I visited since, and other businesses since we made our announcement last Monday. This is real money that will make a real difference in, as I said before, underpinning confidence and momentum and growth. It's about kick-starting the economy. It's $100 million over 2 years. That's the first part of our plan. Future Industries Fund, as well as the Premier's Jobs and Investment Panel, a regional growth fund as well that's all about, specifically about employment opportunities in the regions, not Country Victoria competing with the outer suburbs, but Country Victoria on its own being supported to grow. That's about growing and nurturing those new industries. And finally, showcasing all of that good work to the world with reverse trade missions, bringing the best of the world to see the best of work, the best production, the highest quality, the greatest integrity. We want to bring the world to Victoria, as well as us sending outbound trade missions. All of this plan is about a new way of doing business, a new way of reasserting the fundamental role that the public sector must play in underpinning confidence and growth and opportunity, never wasting a day, never wasting a day. We can't have 4 more years like the last 4. I don't know what the unemployment rate will be in 2018 if we do. I could, of course, talk about TAFE. I could talk about lots of other areas where I think this government has failed and we're poorer for it. But I am hopeful about our state's future. I'm hopeful that there are many areas where we, rather than competing with the low-cost location next door or perhaps a long way away, we again refine, reinvest, reinvigor those areas where we have a natural competitive advantage through processes and knowledge and innovation, the smarts that have always defined Victoria. Our people, that's the way forward. That's the economic development that I want to champion. This plan is an important part of it, and there'll be many more announcements to come between now and the 29th of November. Thank you for your kind invitation to be here today.